Hey folks, my name's Chef Jean-Paul Bourgeois and I'm here in the Louisiana Cooking Test Kitchen. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to make a classic pot roast or roast beef style po' boy. It's one of my dad's favorite po' boys. It's come to become one of mine as well. Let's get to work. First things we have to do is, we wanna go over our ingredients here, and the most important one is this chuck roast right here. You can use brisket, you can use round, you can use this chuck roast, of course, whatever you want. I really like this chuck roast. It has a good kind of marbling, has a lot of fat content, which is what you're gonna need to make, a really succulent, juicy, tender roast beef po' boy. We also have the classic ingredients for a dressed po' boy, which means mayonnaise, lettuce, tomato, and pickle. A couple other ingredients like onion, tomato paste, Worcestershire sauce, beef stock, salt, pepper, and oil, of course. This is a really simple recipe, but it does take time and patience to get it right. First things we want to do is make sure we got a good, liberal seasoning of salt and pepper on every section of that chuck roast. Now, what I like to do sometimes is the night before, I'll season it with salt and pepper and let it sit uncovered in the fridge to kind of let it dry out. This gives that salt and pepper time to really penetrate and draw some moisture out of that chuck roast. Kind of gets that seasoning and flavor just down into that thick meat ahead of time. Again, you see me, I'm doing a nice coating of salt and pepper because I'm not going to give the kind of braise much more seasoning. The seasoning that is on this chuck roast will kind of feed into the braise and the recipe as a whole. Now that that's seasoned, we're going to add a little bit of cooking oil into the bottom of this Dutch oven. Get it on high. Now that I've seasoned this chuck roast fully, liberally with salt and pepper, even the night before, even an hour in advance would work too. My grease is hot into this Dutch oven. You go one side first. And our goal here is to just get a nice dark golden brown on all sides of this pot roast before moving on to our next steps. Now this chuck roast is nearly fully brown, but let me just explain a little bit what I'm doing right now. The crusty bits that you see, that's what we consider the Maillard reaction. And I like to move my chuck roast, or when I'm roasting meat anytime, around the pan just a little bit. And what that does, it brushes the bottom of the pan or bottom of your pot to kind of scrape up a lot more of those brown little bits, increasing the Maillard reaction along that exterior piece of meat. Now we're looking pretty good here. So I'm going to take this chuck roast out of the pan. You can see I have a beautiful brown, fully coated on all sides. I'm going to turn my heat off for just a moment. So I do need to do a little bit more prep right here. Now my next steps involve the stock, tomato paste, Worcestershire, and this full onion. And so I just want to get this onion halved and peeled, then also sliced into nice thin little pieces. All right, once I have that onion taken care of, all I really want to do is just get some nice thin slices of onion. I'm going to turn the fire back on in this pot. You notice all those brown little bits on the bottom. We want all that. We want to preserve all that. We want to use all that to intensify the broth that we're cooking this chuck roast in. I'm going to add my onions into that hot grease. And then with a flat wooden spoon, really want to take those onions and really scrub the bottom of that pot. Try to use a wooden spoon here, not a metal spoon or a silicone spatula, but a wooden spoon. And I'm just going to continue to stir those onions, scraping the bottom of that hot spot. You can see that's all that myoglobin and sugars from that chuck roast stuck to the bottom that we want to just scrape off. And we're going to use the moisture of those onions to deglaze, if you will. I'll tell you what you can do. We're going to open up a little bit of stock. I'm not going to pour it all in. I just want a little bit more liquid there, just a touch, to really get that, there we go, get that gras-doux, if you will. As my friends down in South Louisiana would call that, the gras-doux on the bottom of the pot. See how that stock just lifted that up? I'm gonna keep on cooking those onions and letting them fry in that fat before I add my tomato paste. The deeper you could bring these onions, the more caramelization you can bring to them, the more you manipulate those sugars and add sweetness to this braise, if you will, and that kind of adds some complexity. That's always a good thing, especially with a dish like this where it takes this long, methodical cooking to get it right. Take a nice little, give it a little haircut, get a nice bundle that we're gonna use for in there. Save that for later. You can use dry thyme if you will, if you want. But if you have fresh, it goes a long way in a braise like this. All right, onions are looking nice and brown. I'm gonna add about half of this tomato paste and stir that in. Now, I have a high heat right here. And when you have tomato paste into hot grease, you really wanna make sure you're stirring it, not leaving it alone, because it's high in sugar and will burn easily. I'll add my garlic to this. I just have some whole garlic here. I'm just gonna give it a rough chop, like real rough. No need to mince, but you do want to cut it into somewhat smaller pieces, not just whole pieces. Just nice rough chop so it can kind of melt away in that braise as it cooks. The tomato paste and the garlic and the onion blooming in that oil is becoming very fragrant. If you have some cracked black pepper, this is a good time to add it. That black pepper will also bloom in the fat. But I'm gonna have it just a little freshly ground here to that mixture. Again, just kind of wanting to toast that black pepper into that fat. I'm really starting to change colors here. You're getting that nice, dark, deep brick red from the tomato paste. That's looking pretty good. It's just about time for my stock. I'm gonna add a little Worcestershire first, which is gonna just slowly, or just momentarily, I should say, pause the cooking of that tomato paste. Again, Worcestershire also high in sugars, so just kind of keep that in mind. You want to be careful stirring that bottom of the pot, making sure there's no burning happening there. We are still cooking on a high heat. All right, that's looking pretty good. That Worcestershire is mostly cooked off. I'm gonna add all of this beef stock. If you have chicken stock that's homemade or beef stock homemade, go ahead and use that. Water works fine too. This is a big piece of meat that we're put in there, so essentially it's gonna create its own broth or stock, just kind of organically by cooking. But if you have stock that you've made, it's only gonna, again, make a deeper, more complex kind of braise, which is, in my opinion, really good for a dish like this, especially if you're cooking this in the fall or winter months. When you need something a little heavy and more substantial to warm you up, this is a good po' boy to make during those days. I'm gonna let this come up to a boil, and then I'm gonna drop my pot roast in. All right, our braise, our onion beef stock mixture has come up to a boil. We're ready to go. I'm gonna take this chuck roast, just lay it right into that mixture. Any pan drippings, of course, go right in. And then lastly, I haven't forgotten about my thyme. I'm just gonna rest that right on top. And before I put a lid on it, I'm just gonna take this broth and just start kind of wilting that thyme right over the top of the steak. Right over top of the shoulder roast here. Now I have my oven set at 325. It's gonna take about 2 to 3 hours depending on how thick your chuck roast is, or whatever piece of beef you're cooking. And periodically, every 45 minutes or so, just go in and take the lid off and give it a little basting like I'm doing right now. All right, we'll put this guy to sleep, let him take a nap for about 3 hours at 325. My chuck roast has been cooking for about 2.5 hours. It's fork tender. Let's take a look here. That sucker is looking good. You can see how that sauce is really reduced and concentrated. If we want to make sure the seasoning is right, now's the time to taste it. I'm gonna add a little bit more black pepper, because right now what we want to do is start shredding that chuck roast. You really want this to be fork tender, and you really want to get a good shred in here, because you want all that braise that you made, all that juice in that pot, to really become one with the shredded meat. Just going to use my spoon to kind of break up the rest. Just going to get a good mix of beef to braising liquid mixture there. That's what I'm looking for, a nice homogeneous mixture. All right, I'm gonna retaste for seasoning here, because again, this braise is essentially done. Whatever you have here is what's gonna go on the po' boy. So we wanna make sure that it's seasoned the way we want. My mouth's watering, that's a good sign. I mean, really, there's not much more I would do to this except to put it on a good crusty po' boy bread. While this is sitting, because it is important that it cools a little bit, that meat will kind of relax, even become more tender, I'm going to go ahead and get my griddle hot, because I do have this po' boy bread here that I want to toast. A little butter, really simple toast on it. All right, so your po' boy bread is like a co-star of this dish, right? So you really want to make sure you got a good po' boy bread to use. And if you can't find the exact thing, that's okay. A toast really helps in butter. What I like to do is just take, if it's a thick bread, if it's a dense bread, I like to peel some of that back. This one's actually pretty fluffy and soft and tender, but I want to make sure that roast beef has a nice place to get nestled down into there. We'll go ahead and grab a little butter. Just get a nice smear over that griddle. Oh yeah. Can we fit two? I'm gonna try to fit two. That one right there. Toast. What do you think, Rohan? You think it's about ready? Okay. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. You know, not big, dark toasted bread, but just lightly golden and buttered. I'm gonna bring those suckers over here. We're gonna go classic dressed on these po' boys with the addition of some Creole mustard. So what that means is mayonnaise on each side. A good helping of mayonnaise on a roast beef po' boy, in my opinion, is a nice way to balance the deep, dark richness of the dish itself, of the meat. So I like to go pretty heavy on that smear of mayonnaise. Then also we're just gonna really simply shred some iceberg lettuce. Again, if we're talking dressed po' boys, we're talking iceberg, but go ahead and use whatever lettuce you want, or no lettuce. Dress it how you like. And then a couple slices of tomato. Oh, if you know me, you know I like to salt and pepper my tomato. Anytime I'm serving tomato on any type of dish, whether that be a BLT or a po' boy. I always season my tomatoes with salt and pepper. And if they're lacking a little acid, then I like to do a little red wine vinegar as well. So we can just go pickles on the bottom. Dress it up how you like. Nice layered tomatoes. And then, where'd my tongs go? I'm just going to use this guy. Just a nice heaping spoonful of roast beef or pot roast. Layer it right onto the bread there. Then a little Creole mustard. Some of that tang just goes a long way, and I just give it a nice fat stripe down the middle. And then that iceberg lettuce right on top. Let's see if we can fold this guy over. This is a classic po' boy in New Orleans and around Louisiana. And what you're noticing a lot of folks doing, a lot of po' boy shops around Louisiana, is they're doing surf and turf style po' boys, which would be this roast beef layered with fried shrimp. And I tell you what, that's a good way to get your fix of both roast beef, this like deep, rich kind of ingredient, and then also nice, fresh Gulf shrimp. I just like to cut it right in half. This is the type of po' boy. This reminds me as I'm cutting it. This is the type of po' boy by when you're halfway done with it, you're gonna want a fork and knife to eat it with because it will start to fall apart on you. And that you can see, just cut down the center. It's staying together now, but as I devour this thing, it will fall apart. But that's the way you want it. It's a little bit sloppy, but man, it really does the trick, especially on those cooler days in Louisiana. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Your Louisiana style roast beef po' boy. As good as it's gonna get right here. Let's try it out. Oh man, look how it's just dripping. Classic flavors, classic po' boy. It does the trick. Super delicious and easy. I bet your whole family's gonna like this. All right, I can't keep eating on camera. Y'all gotta go. My name's Chef Jean Paul, and I am out.